Hello and welcome, not back, welcome to how do I normally do these? Hello and welcome for the first time to a Picard review. We've done it. We've done the whole loop. Every modern series is now under my belt in a review. Yes, and if somehow you've missed all of my previous announcements, Discovery's review, it'll still happen. It'll just be later. I don't know when. Maybe tomorrow or Saturday, but it will happen. But we're not here to talk about Discovery. We're here to talk about these two gentlemen and this woman, Picard. The interesting one, series, like Lower Decks and Prodigy are really firmly set. Discovery now, I know what I'm gonna get with Discovery, right? Like, I'm happy with it. I'm enjoying it. I know what I'm gonna get. Picard, I don't know. Like, Picard season 1 was very interesting. I'll talk briefly where, like, there's a lot about Picard that I liked, and there's a lot that I didn't like. The downside is generally the things that I liked were rather small details, or maybe like things in the universe, and the things I didn't like were the plot, the tone, and generally the show. But of course, we've got a new change of showrunner. I mean, Discovery went from the worst season of television I had ever seen to season 3. Like, I know these improvements can happen. I'd say I'm going in with an open mind. I've talked before, if you really want to know a lot of my reviews, go into my poorly explained, any trailer analysis I've done, but definitely going in with an open mind. I'm expecting a series that, like the first one, there'll be a lot I like, there'll be a lot I don't, and it's maybe more on the negative side just because of fears with Q, the changes they'll make to him. Not necessarily ruining the character, because I think a slightly more mature Q is the sensible direction he would have gone in, but because I don't see the point of Q if you remove what I can only describe as the Q-ness. As I said, open mind. I may be expecting that, but I mean, hey, I've been surprised before. Discovery Season 3 went in with an open mind and very much enjoyed it. So I think, without further ado... Oh, but I will say one more prediction, just kind of judging by this thumbnail. And also I saw some image references for like the first image, just because I had to know what thumbnail I needed to make. Love that thumbnail, by the way. I'm kind of expecting an episode that'll just catch us up to the trailers. I don't want this intro to be too long. Let's just get into it, and I will see you after the episode. They literally gave Q exactly the scene, like word for word. I have said they should give him if he ever brought back for 5 years. Just, oh, you're a lot older than I remember. Boop, there, I've got up. But, other than that, obviously that was just on my mind. I haven't seen this, by the way. I don't like these next seasons on, so don't spoil them or anything. Also, try not to reference this episode of Discovery, today's episode, until after my review comes up, for similar reasons. I'll tell you what, regardless of what you thought about this episode, you can't deny that they have finally figured out the meaning of slow-paced character study. Yeah, welcome to halfway through the first trailer? I mean, I don't know, not quite the explosive opening I was hoping for, and it was kind of like I said, where there'd be a lot I liked, a lot I didn't. Almost felt reversed, where it was a lot of the little things I didn't like, but more of the like larger picture zoom out was fine. There's exceptions, going both ways. I mean, it was no Remembrance, I guess. It was definitely, the beginning was slow, getting people into each other's lives. I will say, like, who wrote this episode? Because, especially in the beginning, it felt so clunky. There were a lot of, there were a lot of lines. The Daj, is it? Daj or Soji? Oh god, I can't remember which, but had a line. It's like, We've been exploring the galaxy for the past year since the Federation lifted its ban on synthetics. Clunk. Is the deputy director of Starfleet Academy. Clunk. Like, it... who wrote that? You don't do that. And, like, every now and then one slips through. I understand one of the biggest, like, moments I had was, I don't know if you know the YouTuber Nerdcube is writing a time travel science fiction book, basically with the goal of there being no plot holes, which is amazing. Because, you know, that no one has ever done that. I maybe like small podunk author I've never heard of is done that in a short story, but like no one big has ever managed to do that. And it was a moment of he said, I've been taking like 2 years to write my book, and I had a realization that, you make mistakes because you need to write 26 episodes of Voyager this year, and you have like a week to do this one. And so, but like, that's why lines like that, clunky lines, will leak through. You know, they always will every now and then. But why is that an excuse now? Because you could not film for so long. You wrote scripts for Section 31, the show after this one at best. Like, you wrote season 3, for crying out loud. You're filming it now. Like, a second pass? I don't know. That one just really rubbed me the wrong way. We'll counter with a positive next. I've thought of one. There we go. One of my favorite scenes in The Next Generation, season 1. Season 1 and 2 had a lot of scenes like this that are kind of different in tone than anything that came in the later seasons, the sort of good ones. It's where no one has gone before, when the first Traveler episode, where, you know, people's thoughts are becoming real. And Picard has that moment where, like, he sees his mom. It might be his grandma. I'm going to be real embarrassed if it's his grandma. Damn, I'm going to check. I'm actually going to fact check that. It is his mother. Where Picard... Well, here, I'll show you the picture. Picard finds his mother, right? And has a conversation with her or whatever. But he's, like, shocked because, you know, she died a long time ago. And then Riker comes around the corner and is like, sir, whatever. Picard's like, damn it, Riker, can't you see I'm talking? And then he turns around, his mother's gone. And then the scene is the moment where he's still just kind of sitting, leaning down on the hallway, and, like, completely empty. He just looks down for several seconds. Like, we look at him from the back. We don't know what's on his face. But the music, the emotion, and he just has several seconds where he has to sit there and, like, come to terms with the re-disappearance of his mother, I guess, the re-death of his mother after so long before he gets up and goes back to business. The idea of this season elaborating on that, I find really intriguing. There's the converse to the fact that this season potentially ruining that is terrifying, because, as I said, it is one of my favorite moments in The Next Generation, in Star Trek. Heck, I'll go that far. But it is interesting to get, like, we've never heard about his mother. I'm sure she's brought up in, like, Family, Brothers. I should really learn the name of that episode. I referenced it so much, the one after Best of Both Worlds. But it's more his father you hear stuff about. I was concerned looking at, like, the scenes, the flashback. I mean, something bad happened to his mother, right? I think that's pretty apparent. Kind of the flash scenes of that. I mean, it looked like someone broke into their house, either murdered her or whatever, stole her, which, like, these things are meant to be misleading. They always are. But there's the concern of, you might do that? And anyone remember, in fact, I think it was Paris they were talking about when Harry Kim was shocked to learn that there were pickpockets on Earth? In Paris. Pickpockets. When was the last time someone was broken into on Earth? And, like, but, like, it's speculation. I'm not gonna yell at a show for something it hasn't actually done yet. But it's the concern. It's that Picard, I've said before, I don't have faith in the show. Even though it's a lot of new people running it, they need to earn that faith. And this episode did not do that. Like, there were minor things. A lot from season 1. I don't particularly like how casual they'll swear and throw around stuff. Like, especially walking down Starfleet Academy. There's one, tell me you don't understand Star Trek without telling me you don't understand Star Trek. I genuinely don't think, even in theory, that you can do better than this right here, by which I of course mean worse. The Federation is the organization which is the representation of some perfect conceptual ideal that is quite frankly unobtainable over the span of centuries. It is the pinnacle of morality and the model that we should all aspire to, in full knowledge that even if we can get pretty goddamn close, we can never touch because of one slip up or one anything. And Starfleet officers, that uniform, is the physical representation of that ideal that serves that ideal even when the Federation does not. And it is the model that many of us aspire to be and means so much. And this right here is not just the uniform. This is a Starfleet captain smoking a cigarette. Fuck you too, is all I have to say to that. Just fuck you too. We're gonna look at this screen now because I can't stand to look at that picture anymore. Yeah, it was more of those like, where's Utopia? I had this discussion before I want to read on Twitter where kind of the lines of Picard didn't choose the stars, he kind of ran away into the stars, which I don't think they've given enough one way or another to prove that's true. I think they've honestly taken lines out of context to provide something more engaging in a trailer. I don't, those two aren't mutually exclusive necessarily. So again, not going to complain about something that hasn't happened. It's just this expert from Patrick Stewart on Admiral Picard at the start of season 2. His understanding that his childhood was not resolved in the way that he's always believed it was. That he had a misunderstanding about what happened within his family, between his mother and his father, and himself. And this, I think, is one of the primary reasons that led him to join Starfleet. Because then you escape. Joining Starfleet is a big running away. Well, at the same time, I'm feeling things reading this. Well, at the same time, putting yourself in the firing line for huge experiences to happen to you. So it's both. It's denying one thing and embracing somewhere else. Epistemically, could you make it beautiful? Probably. But are you still fundamentally altering the single best role model in all of television so that this spirit of exploration is actually running away from his family? Yes, that's terrifying. I think making Picard broken is the pinnacle of much of the Kurtzman era, which I am very favorable. I think Picard is the only show I'm not favorable on at this point, but let me elaborate. The classics were very much lead by example and show what can be done. Kurtzman stuff is much more, things suck now, and we reflect that in the show and how to deal with it. I've said before, I think what Discovery is doing is great, but if you want to show that brokenness, then do it in Discovery, or with a new character who isn't the example. Messing with Picard, and especially his backstory, only serves to hurt the example, the goal, of the Federation. Discovery's examples are important and show us what the classics never did, which is, but how do we get to Utopia? I still believe that. But without that unobtainable goal becoming less and less unobtainable over the decades, what's the point? I truly believe that goal is becoming less and less unobtainable. Great thing is, the Federation, well, humanity has no money, right? Could it work? Yes. The honest answer is absolutely yes, because for most of human history, many civilizations have not had money, and they worked, right? Epistemically, it could work. In practice, but I've always seen it as an extreme that if you could do it, yeah, it would work. But I don't think you need to do it, because this is a game, but, sidetrack now. But basically, I don't think there's a problem with having super rich in your society. I think there's a problem with having the super rich in your society and having people who are in poverty. That's when the problem happens, right? Like, epistemically, are those mutually exclusive? No, but it's kind of the in-practice thing. And for, ages, I've always felt that. With the Great Resignation stuff and kind of seeing all across the world, people leaving the traditional jobs and kind of living with that. They still make money, obviously, but much more basic and doing a lot more odd jobs things. I've had feelings reading the articles of, no, we could do it. Like, could we do it tomorrow as a society? No. Like, could a 90-year-old me be laying in the rocking chair and watching my grandkids emerge into that era? Yeah, I think that's possible. But the utopian ideal of the Federation got a little less unobtainable. And I think you need that progress, because otherwise, why are you trying to get to utopia if your ideal is just getting worse over time? Many people, myself included, model themselves in some ways, even live their lives by the phrase, "What would Picard do?" This was something someone else pointed out to me. I think I saw in a YouTube video that Picard is basically the Jesus of Star Trek. Not in a religious sense, but that there's a great many people who, like Christians, would go, "What would Jesus do in this situation?" Who would go, "What would Picard do?" That's the right answer. Messing with that is a huge responsibility. Putting dents in that model only serves to give us the excuse to falter and cheat on our morality. What if you don't think you can, match someone like Picard is a person? That's your role model? You think it's unobtainable? Well, that's why you need discoveries, many examples of perfect conversations, and you do need what a lot of people will call the more relatable examples. Honestly, I've related to Picard, in generally the more perfect examples, I've found more relatable than people like Pulaski, or a lot of the Discovery crew, which is weird because I definitely don't consider myself perfect, but I've always found those older characters to be much more relatable. But that's kind of my point, is you need both. And I fear they'll make Picard one of sort of that other, that broken, and, well, then who's your role model? People will say that, the new stuff doesn't affect the old stuff. No, you're wrong. It absolutely does. There's plenty of new stuff that is completely enhanced the old stuff. Unification, everything that has been done with Romulan reunification has greatly enhanced the old stuff that does the same. And a lot of the new stuff has really messed with the old stuff, because you see scenes that were once beautiful and you go, oh, I remember when Ichib got their eye ripped out, or stuff like that. It doesn't work like that. And yeah, really what I get from this season is, this episode is, basically, I don't get reassured. And especially a fucking Starfleet officer smoking a cigarette on duty, it's worse. On Captain, it's worse. But even in general, no. It's when Obama got elected president, he made the decision to stop smoking. And Tom Baker did a similar thing, the doctor, with smoking and drinking. He's like, I can't be seen in public. Some of them quit. Some just go, I can't be seen in public drinking, smoking, whatever, because it's the acknowledgement that you were a role model. And I'll do this. I think a lot about what I say, what I do, how I deal with certain things, in the states of the world, what I want the channel to be. Even someone as small as me. And when you're Starfleet, when you're touching Starfleet, it's just people who don't acknowledge that I am the role model. Because it's even if you take Starfleet out of it, what you're doing to people who watch this show, it's not a show made for kids, but you'll definitely get the older non-adults or very young adults watching it. Teens, or very early 20s maybe. And you know what you've just told them? Hey, Starfleet's cool. Hey, Rios is cool. Hey, Rios smokes those big old cigarettes. Hey, smoking is cool. That's what you've just done. And as I said before, fuck you too. Isn't Picard liberating? Man, as much as I don't like the language, my rule of I'm gonna be as appropriate is the show I'm reviewing does have some advantages when you go to Picard. Less so in Prodigy, but I'm liking Picard. What else is there? The Borg? We could talk about the major thing. It's one heck of a pitch for the show. a species who can rip a hole through the fabric of the universe wants to join the Federation, and it's the Borg. I certainly believe they would. You do again have the problem, and I said before, they're not going to join the Federation. Look at Discovery. Point to the Borg. There's also like, this could be the beginning of the end of the Federation. Oh, and after this, be sure to go watch Discovery, which is in about 1,000 years in the Federation. But it's an interesting pitch. I fully believe they could. The Borg, they broke after Endgame. Of course, Thanos, they broke when Janeway and Thanos destroyed the thing. I'll think of it. Borg Subspace Transport Hub. Yes, there we go. But then after that, they kind of rebuilt, maybe added a bit more individuality into themselves, but still very kind of that mechanical, efficient thinking of, we're going to talk to the Federation. Who's the face of the Federation? Picard. Get us Picard. It's like, all right, we're going to negotiate with the Federation. What do? Well, you go to the bridge, because that's where Picard is. Like, they don't want us on the bridge. You go to the bridge. That's what you do. That's how you negotiate. And so I can definitely see that. Also, I was very angry at the Borg vessel because the fact the Borg do geometry is terrifying. It's one of the most terrifying concepts. It is the most terrifying alien concept ever. Because what it says, it's a genocide machine that's a cube. The other shapes are much less terrifying, but the cube is terrifying because it's those, we are here to kill you, functionally. I mean, it's assimilation, but we're here to do worse. We're here to strip you of your individuality, and we're not here to reason, we're here to wage war, strip you of your individuality, and we came in a cube. And you know what that says? Not just a massive cube. You know what that says? We have the resources and power to build a massive spaceship, and we did it in a cube because we don't care about anything but reaching that end goal of the death of your culture and the destruction of your individuality. Because a cube has the best surface area to volume ratio. I'm pretty sure it might be a sphere, but the cubes, it's also has the advantage of it's easy to build. It's straight lines, it's 90-degree angles, it's utilitarian, it's easy, and it's terrifying. This was not that. This was a messy, big, shattery design. But if the Borg aren't big, assimilative utilitarians anymore, well, some big, messy thing that's still vaguely geometric, you got the past in there, but is messy, it's broken, like it's much more complicated and intricate. Yeah, that fits. And so I really wouldn't be surprised of the Borg actually do want to join the Federation, but like it was a big misunderstanding, basically. Like they're just going about it wrong, like with their machine efficient brains. I mean, the first thing the Borg Queen said was like, what do you need? Power. My mind is like, oh, great. You intentionally chose a word that has an innocent meaning and an oppressive meaning. And of course, I realize that because I'm an intelligent human being. And I realize, hey, maybe your cyborg just needs electricity, power. And all these utopian Starfleet people are going to go, my God, they're here to kill us because they want authoritarian power. Yeah, it was another thing that bothered me as well with that, like, tell me you don't understand Starfleet without telling me you don't understand Starfleet, is when Rios is like, hold your fire. Several times, and not a single person even hesitates to think that they should hold their fire. No, like, this is the bridge. These are like your lieutenants and your commanders and your highly trained individuals. Maybe like an ensign. This is what happens when you let your captain smoke. I'm sounding like an old man. Gee, Nathan, it's the first episode of the series. Make sure, you might not like it, but make sure to try and stay positive and just make it clear you got an open mind and focus on the negatives less. Don't lead with them. Definitely don't make people think you just hate it to hate it. Well, here's a good point. A lot of classic ships. That was nice. Weirdly, some really classic ships. Like, I saw proper Excelsiors. I saw some Discovery era, but kind of refit, brought up with a modern technology, so maybe it's a new class. They mentioned the Grissom is in, like, the Oberth class, Grissom. They didn't show it, so it could be like a new Grissom. It is kind of weird how much we're getting repeat names without letters. Like, yeah, eventually you'll run out. It was nice, definitely. Like, they heard the copy faithfully was dumb, and they went overboard. Not in a bad way. I mean, you can never have the too many ships, but it's like, all right, here's your Akira. We know Nova classes show up later. I think a steam runner's in one of the trailers. But yeah, that was nice. Let's counter back. Why is Girardi here? It did feel really weird, like when Captain Rios called Girardi to the ship, you've detected a subspace anomaly. Oh, by the way, can we appreciate the line where, like, the subspace anomaly opens, the Akira cast, like, gets hit, and the very first thing we hear in with instant is like, Starfleet Command, this is the USS Lollipop. We've encountered a subspace anomaly. Please advise. Like, you're Starfleet. It's not like this is a please advise situation. This is your job, is to, hey, we've encountered an anomaly. You don't even know what it is yet. But it's like, why are you bringing the Earth's foremost expert in cybernetics to investigate a subspace anomaly? And she's kind of just in the first officer's chair. Like, does Rios not have a first officer? Why is Girardi here? And the answer, of course, is because she's a main character and they want her to stay that way. It was another bit like, for a script that they had a good, like, year and a half to write, it was very clunky. It did get better in the end after they felt they, didn't have to establish themselves anymore. They could kind of get into their story. But even things like Picard's speeches and stuff, it kind of felt weird at the Academy. Like, why exactly are you giving this speech? Like, you got the right speech. They're very Star Trek speeches in the beginning. But I kind of thought to myself lots, like, why am I here? It kind of feels like all you're doing is just setting up the theme of the story, and not in some, like, more clever way or naturally, but just like, all right, this is the opening of the story, is how Picard's a closed off individual and needs to kind of look out, and that our ending scene is also going to be on this balcony, and he's actually going to be close to people. It's going to be All Good Things, where he sits down at the poker table, and there you go. There's the perfect example. That's how you do it naturally, is I should have done this years ago. Thinking about it, you did, didn't you? Yeah, talk about the new shows not affecting the past. So are we saying that the bookend of the Next Generation, which was Picard, started opening up, and he joined the poker table. He started becoming a part of his crew's lives. They were very familial, but even more so, and properly joining them outside of work. Are we kind of saying he just stopped? He's like, after the credits, was he like, actually, you know what? I suck at poker. Get back to work? I think I might get into scene by scene. This has been way more nitpicky than I wanted. But the large part is often I'll talk about the plots and the developments, but I know more about the plot from the trailer than this episode. Episode 1, supposed to be your big opener, get them hooked, and this was a lot of, like, real slow, look at how good of a life everyone's having, which, oh god, that intro with Picard, like, yeah, that's how I wanted Picard's retirement to go. Now I know that episode 2, which historically I always talk about is the slow one, that, okay, now the plot has to happen. Well, I feel like that's just going to be the second half of the trailer. They've got to go to LA/San Francisco. They do both. I just don't have any developments to talk about, because there really weren't any, other than this is how the Borg get introduced. I knew that. They changed the Starfleet uniform from under me again. Honestly, I'm kind of getting annoyed at how every season seems to have its own uniform, and like 3 of them at that. Like, can we settle down a bit? Every series gets its own uniform. Fine. Every now and then, Discovery sat in their old ones for a bit and then went, no, let's get a better one. We had a major change. But, like, honestly, it's just tiring at this point. And it's like, oh, there's another one. Honestly, I'm mostly mad because now the thumbnail doesn't work. I was so proud of that thumbnail my partner drew, and then immediately after I got it, the characters for them. I do the thumbnails. My partner does the characters. I saw the images of Raffi in this new uniform. It's like, oh, why not? I just stick with a uniform. I forgot about the intro as well. It felt a little long. That might be because of the music, because it felt like when the Faith of the Heart got remixed, you start season 3 of Enterprise and you're like, oh, the Picard season 1 theme was beautiful. But this one was like, oh, what if you remove the Picard theme from Picard? Like, the Picard theme is da 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 da. And this went, what if you remove that? I'm like, oh, this is literally nothing music. It makes sense thematically. Like it's twisted, it's darker. I see that. There's even some of that light at the end, where like you get the da da da, but some of the notes are twisted, or like there's the occasional da 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 da, like or something. I mean, I can't do it. I'm not a music theorist. This keyboard is not used to play original songs. It's the very first theme ever for Star Trek that I've gone, that was nothing. I will never remember that theme. I will remember the beautiful opening theme, like the season 1, but I might actually click the skip intro button, which is blasphemy. I did find this scene funny because they're using the holographic interface for literally my token example of why semi-transparent interfaces are awful. They've been doing a lot better in making ones that work, but transparent interfaces, if we ever get them, absolutely have their uses. 3D semi-transparent interfaces. Art is not one of them, because a semi-transparent interface is, you know how you can see this picture? Well, imagine if I took a picture of the desk behind this monitor, overlaid it on the monitor, but at like 20% opacity. You can't design on that. But, especially in the sun. But I did find it funny. It's the token example. This scene was interesting as well, because it's one of those that it felt like it was really out of the blue, and as a fan, I was initially resistant towards. But as I was watching it, I'm also like, well, why? Like, why am I resisting this? I'm like, why not? If he's in love, live with the Romulan. And I thought about it more. It's supported in a lot of old Star Trek. I mean, as he said, he's been in love before. I'm like, why? Is it because it's a Romulan and there are enemies? Like, I'd hate to think that's the reason. I wondered, is it like an age difference? I don't know how old the actress is, but maybe Picard definitely looks his age, unless he's way older than I think he is. And maybe this Romulan doesn't, but I'm like, well, she's a Romulan. Like, they age a lot slower. I mean, how old was Spock? Actually, Spock was about the age he looked. But you know my point. And that's where I think I can do well with, I don't like this because it's new, and I don't like this because I actually have a problem, because there are times where I don't like this because it's new. But every time that's happened, I've felt it feels different, and it feels, I don't think I like this because it's new. And I warmed up to it more as it went on, but I think it was kind of the bias of, I expect to be disappointed. God, this episode had a lot as well where it felt like a chore, where it kept making me either have foreign languages I didn't know. I think they were speaking Romulan in the previous scene. Might have been French, because it really sounded French. But it kind of felt like homework. It's like, oh, I gotta read this now, I gotta listen to this. And it's putting the other languages is good. You know, there's a certain real world quality. Not in the universe. In universe, it's dumb, because they have the universal translator. But in the real world, you know, I can appreciate that. But it felt like a bit of an overload, honestly. So the CinemaSins, boop, reading. But beyond that, I also felt there was a lot that I really struggled to understand. Like, a lot in this scene, I had no clue what the mother or like this Picard were saying. I guess they're both Picard, probably. It was either quiet or like their weird whisper. The audio recording wasn't great. I'm half deaf, so things that only happen in this year I'll struggle with anyway. But it was a different problem where I just felt a lot was hard to understand. And there were other scenes, the Borg, as they were slowly revealing that message, I couldn't get "Help us, Picard" until well after everyone in the scene did. And like, it's weird. There were bits where I'm like, why can't you just like say it? Like, why do I have to read this, whatever? And it's like, there were other bits where it's like, can I please read this? Because I honestly have no idea what you're saying right now. Again, the fans are never pleased. I kind of feel like they overcorrected, and this was too slow, especially for our first episode, where it's like, oh, it's great. I loved seeing Picard just tend his field, like, be happy in retirement. I liked him walking around in Starfleet, but then there were bits where it's like, there were other bits even in Starfleet where I'm like, can we kind of do something now? Like, I do have an hour, you know? And I was like, oh god, this was 55 minutes. This did not have to be 55 minutes. So I in that respect, I think it might be better. I think leaving the 24th century will really help because they can have a lot of the characters and tone they want to, and it makes sense. It makes sense in our day, and it makes sense in Star Trek's 2020, I think 2024 they're going to, which is, if you thought now was bad, you should see Star Trek now. But yeah, the point is, it'll get a bit faster. Stuff will happen. They can do their character stuff, obviously, but also, you know, have a plot. Again, last week's Discovery, I said that 2 things happened. I think 1 thing happened in this episode, like the Borg attacked. I don't think Q showing up counts as a thing. Yeah, I mean, next episode we'll get the development. Q will say, this is what's going on, this is what you need to do. Avengers assemble, San Francisco 2024. That's the episode. Is it just me, or is Starfleet Academy really dark in Picard? And San Francisco as a whole is like a super dark, almost oppressive feel to it. And in this sense, I do mean the color dark. Like, it's a very dark shade for, like, usually utopian, beautiful, bright city. But, like, this is the first Star Trek city I've seen that I don't want to live in. It looks depressive and cold and metal. And in Starfleet Academy, like, metal as well. You kind of see what I mean, where this episode was a lot, constant, very little things I didn't like. Like, San Francisco is oddly dark and oppressive. Meh. Like, if that was the only thing, it'd be a joke we laugh at. Everything was kind of like that, and without any sort of development or major positives. I'm very interested to see what the fans thought about this episode. Hang on, I've just realized as well, this was a meeting at the Academy. Why is there a Klingon flag? Have they joined? Like, that's a major thing to miss. Like, why is there one in the Academy? Like, sure, there are allies, but Klingons, they can go to the Academy, but they're not a member world. It's like having the Canadian flag in the United States Military Academy. Like, okay, sure, we're friendly, but the Canadians don't really have anything to do with this. Here's another question where before there was a joke in my poorly explained, why isn't everyone, especially Girardi, in jail for murder? I like, throwaway line. I was cleared because of temporary alien-induced insanity. Good enough. But good. I'm happy. How did 7 end here? Because aren't the Fenris Rangers seen as terrorists? The Maquis, basically. It's like if Eddington just kind of joined Cisco for a bit and then was like, all right, you can go back to the Maquis now. And I was like, okay, maybe she slipped away at some point. I don't know, maybe. Like, sure. But then she's just welcomed onto Rios' ship, and not as we need a temporary alliance, like this is a big deal, but like, oh, please, come aboard. Stay tuned in our meetings. In fact, did Rios have a meeting with Picard, Girardi, 7, and none of his crew? Quite frankly, I would have kept shooting too if I was on his crew, thinking about it. Like, this is a Starfleet captain who smokes, invites random people who really shouldn't be there on missions, and then just doesn't even bother to have a first officer, let alone tell them what to do. I bet he does have a first officer, but they were just, like, having a bath or whatever, because they know Rios wouldn't even notice if he didn't show up. But it's also weird, because Starfleet crates were definitely Starfleet medical. You could say maybe they reformed. Maybe they're doing more humanitarian work, which it really doesn't look like. They're not seen as like the Maquis. Really, it is a Maquis situation. Like the civilians who've basically been abandoned by both governments, or rather made their own government that neither side recognizes. it just kind of runs things through guns. I'm not really sure who they're fighting anyways, but like, if you say that, right, if that's your argument, that they're working with Starfleet and they're making the neutral zone a better place, all that does is make Vance's refusal of Osiris Treaty even worse. This one had another scene, was another one that was kind of clunk, that I can see why. I'm pretty sure one of the showrunners for Picard this season was the person who pitched Ala Moraine, not the episode, but the scene Ala Moraine. Where Jurati had the line like, "Oh, is this how pretty people flirt?" I think was her exact line, and I went, "Is this like a particularly pretty individual? But more importantly, are you not? Are you not pretty?" And I realized as I've discussed this, is Rios not? Like when you two had a thing back then, this guy right here is probably the least pretty amongst Jurati, this guy, and Rios. I'll grant him, I think he's probably prettier than bearded Maddox, but the point is, it's subjective anyway. But again, I can't stress this enough, utopia, even if now isn't utopia, Jurati's old enough to know the next generation. Is Jurati not someone who grew up believing she was either pretty, or at least good enough for like herself, and has trouble with pretty people approaching her? Because she kind of seemed like someone good looking enough to have good looking enough people approach her at some point in her life. I've also just realized, are all the synths bald? Because I kind of assumed this was a meeting of synths, and Soji was the only one. Hang on. Yes, as best as I can tell, all the synths but Soji are bald, which, fine, culture thing, but is kind of interesting when you consider none of the synths were bald in the last in season 1. New ship, the Stargazer. I guess we've abandoned letters. I wonder if it was the same registry. Probably not, because it was an 8 something. It looked like about the same as the Titan ships of this era. I've never been a fan of more than 2 nacelled starships. I'm quite fond of the Stargazer. Like, there are ones that'll get me, especially nowadays as it becomes more common. They've thrown Gene Roddenberry's rulebook out the window. But to me, it's kind of that more that I think a lot of the live actions, not even that, some lower decks ones as well, it just kind of felt like they're overly greebly and just kind of too chunky. I didn't really like the saucer with the chunky bit. It's a serviceable ship, but it's one of those, like, well, in the old days, you have like a Freedom class, a Chekhov class, a USF Chekhov, some of the Worf 359 fleet. Really weird ones. But I always liked, of course, the original Matt Jeffries Enterprise. That's how you can refer to it unambiguously. Matt Jeffries Enterprise. Probably not ambiguous, but it's famously no Greeblies, because the thinking was it's so far in the future that we will have moved beyond anything, any need for any sort of seam or outside access. Like, outside access is just dumb in a spaceship. Like, you do that all inside where it's safe. It also does have the advantage, yes, that it's easy to build, but there were genuine design choices made for that. Then, of course, you add the good old D, which is a nice amount of, add some surface detail, but there's no Greeblies. You have, here's the shuttle bay, here's the phaser, here's the RCS, like, you have functionality, but there is not a single thing on the Enterprise D that is decoration. There's aesthetic to, like, its curves, its structure. There are well-placed, aesthetically pleasing, functional things, but there is nothing that is aesthetic other than the paint job on the Enterprise D. It's harder. I'm looking, the bigger the ships are, the harder it is to see those small details. The NX is kind of the opposite, where it was supposed to be rivety and like we'd build this today. But I feel a lot of the modern designs, of course, 32nd century, beautiful exception, because they've done the exact same thing. This is hyper advanced. There shouldn't be any Greeblies. Is kind of over-designed. It feels kind of rivety, segmented. It's got fins, for crying out loud. I'm sure many people will love it. A lot of people adore 4-nacelled ships. But for me, it's just a bit much. Even if, or also a little too removed from the Stargazer. It's more a Brawn, which, thinking about it, I've said before, Brawn to me feels like a proto-Stargazer. Like, in that lineage, yeah, alright, but it's just one of those kind of it's there ships. I'm gonna just not think of it. But thumbs up to, actually doing different ships. Oh, look at that, Los Angeles. Okay, I've put two and two together, but look, that's a beautiful city. Modern, gray, like, that's a nice city. I've just realized Los Angeles, the bar at 10 forward is the historical district, meaning when you go back in time to Los Angeles, it's going to look the same. And I've also realized, well, we don't know if Guinan was around in 2024. I sure as hell wouldn't be. If I was an alien, like they were there in the 1800s, but if I was an alien in Star Trek's 2024, I would get off that planet. And they did, eventually. They made their way to the Nexus. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Guinan in 10 forward in the past. Because it's a historical district. Chekhov's gun. At the very least, you gotta go there. If you don't go to Los Angeles and set it in a set your thing in the historical district, even Sanctuary District, that could be fun to make 10 forward the Sanctuary District, or at least in it. But yeah, look, nice city. I can be positive. Yeah, no, there's totally an Excelsior right there, just with new nacelles. Ooh! Sorry, I hit the mic. There's a Sovereign. Perhaps even the Enterprise. They might have brought it up, but there's a Sovereign, which is great to see because it's such a new class of ship. You'd be an idiot to just throw it out like so recently after it was made. Right here, you've got Shepard class. It's the Corella, USS Corella from Discovery. No, well, it's sort of. It really has stone nacelles. Maybe it is. Wait, is it the Grissom? Oh my god, it is. I think it's sorry, down there. I think that's the USS Gagarin, which is a Star Trek Online ship. Nice to see, because it's, the same time, roughly. Is it the 26th century, or 25th century now? Well, yeah, it's been a year and a half. It's 2400. We've done it. We've made it to the 25th century. Of course, Nebula, Akira, the La Serena. Oh, there's a Luna class as well at the top there. Another Sovereign, Nebulas, Akiras. A Zhang He, well, it's not the Zhang He, I think it's a Toussaint variant, actually, but one of those. So yeah, that lovely collection ships to see. Old, new. I might have had an Excelsior. I kind of think of a lot of that, like the Dominion War, as a reset, getting rid of a lot of those older ships that have been in service for ages, but very nice. And you know what? The new Stargazer is much better from this angle. So it's definitely a ship that's still not my favorite, but has got very angle dependent, we'll call it. I'm sorry though, is that supposed to be some sort of Enterprise D? It looks like Star Trek Online has gotten to that one. There's a real weird one. I've just realized they put the Borg Queen in this weird get-up. Is it his mom? Because we've seen the Borg Queen in the trailers. I didn't really like it, but I'm like, it's gonna be because Picard would recognize her. I wonder if maybe this isn't the Borg collective, but this is like some sort of rogue ship. Could be interesting. But obviously, I think Picard's mom is in the collective somehow. Then again, I was going to say it was the look up comment. You could get that from when Picard was the cutest, just from his memories. Yeah, I don't have too much to say again. It was just like, oh, we're halfway through the trailer. So everyone totally had like a bit of a jump when they saw this. I like they kept this secret for several reasons, because there's still a surprise factor when you see it's Q, but we're all expecting that image with, well, the image in a few seconds, but I'm like, whoa, wait, that's Q. Like that Q. The de-aging is weird, because a lot of people will say it looks absolutely awful and completely inhuman. Grand Admiral Tarkin, was it? The Star Wars guy was kind of the first big one, where a lot of people talked about that. I genuinely couldn't tell that it was CGI. When I watched Rogue One, there were times where I was like, okay, yeah, I can accept that. My dad didn't know, and intentionally I didn't tell him till afterwards, and he didn't believe me. He refused. So, like, I'm face blind. I get me. I can see his face when I look at it, but I can understand that there's weird stuff going on when I look at faces. My dad's not face blind. There are definitely people who see it differently, and I've been like, yeah, that's just them. You know, it's definitely not the best. Like, I can tell it almost looks a bit rubbly. It's really good. De-aging is really impressive, but also... Okay, this was longer than that didn't work. Oh, it did work. Yeah, that's how long it was. And just, I'm glad we started with a young Q so you could get that boop. I just love that. Yeah, it's exactly what I said it should be for 5 years. Because it's obvious. Like, I never understood people who say John Delancey couldn't play Q again. Could you really not come up with this scene? Heck, this scene was in All Good Things. I'm gonna put it up.
Hey, what was that she said, Sonny? I couldn't quite hear her.
There, like, they've done it before. But it's nice to see that, yeah, it's like, oh, well, boop, I've caught up now. And there we go, now I'm really caught up. That was really an episode that didn't change anything for me. There's some interesting stuff like, oh, Picard's mother, you know, that could be interesting to develop, but I don't have that faith. I didn't get it from this episode. I saw exactly what I thought, is they might make some improvements, but by and large, it will be a show. And same for season 3. Of course, they're filming them back to back, so if this season doesn't fix problems, neither will next season. There's a lot I don't like. There's gonna be stuff I do like. And all in all, it'll probably be a bit meh, maybe negative. I'm not gonna call the series now. Like, as I said, a lot of the problems, I think, were that they couldn't do the story they wanted, because they felt they had to, you know, develop things. They had to set where everyone is, right? You know, and my problems, you know, getting the group together felt kind of unnatural. But now that it's together, that's not a problem anymore. That's in the past. So, like, yeah, it could be good. Unless Discovery bombs it, I think I'm probably going to start with Discovery next week. But I'll put it up to a poll, most likely, unless Discovery's got a great cliffhanger. Because right now, I don't particularly care to come back to Picard. I will, but like, I could wait 5 months if, like, just as a random number and not feel any different. But yeah, Discovery, I don't have time to review it today. This took way too long. My roommate will be back before I'm finished recording, so expect it hopefully Friday, maybe later, maybe Saturday. Shouldn't be after Saturday though. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking to the end of a pretty negative review. I try not to do one. I'm honest, but I mean, this was one of the ones where I just think it was unbalanced in the episode. And so my reviews are unbalanced. And I know they never tend to do as well, but Picard's back, and that means exactly what I think a lot of us thought it would. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.